My name is Jane Espenson. I am supervising producer on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is an episode I wrote from season 5 called I Was Made to Love You. I think my title when this was written was probably producer. And we start out in the teaser right away setting up our theme. This is an episode about how Buffy views relationships with men, future relationships and past relationships. We were really lucky that this episode came along at just the perfect time. We knew any episode about a robot that was built to love someone would be about relationships, and this came about right after Buffy finds out that Spike's interested in her, which leads her to reflect on her relationship with men in general. And we start out with her beating up Xander, which I just thought would be really, really funny. And this worked out pretty well. I love the puffy suit on Xander. And she's talking with him about how she doesn't seem to attract the good men, that she's attracting someone like Spike, and what does that say about her? And that she wasn't able to make it work with the good guy, Riley. And we're going to find out more later as we get into the story about how what Buffy's going to be observing with April in this episode makes her think about how she was with Riley. Joss gave a very good line for this teaser. When we break the story, Joss goes through every beat of the story with us, and he'll frequently suggest a joke that then gets into the script, because they're always the best. And when someone comes up to you on the street and compliments an episode and they mention a line, it's almost always something that Joss wrote. So his big line in this teaser is when Buffy hugs Xander, and Xander says, "This is the day you choose to hug me," which is a really nice line. And she's talking here about how maybe she just doesn't do the right things to attract a man. Maybe she should be laughing at their jokes more and being less self-involved, which is sort of an interesting character trait that we've given Buffy, that even though she is a hero and she saves the world, we've sort of consistently made her kind of self-involved, a little standoffish, a little distant with her friends. And this was a really nice moment of her having a kind of awareness of that. Xander's talking about, well, maybe the problem with trying to build a relationship on the Hellmouth is that it's a Hellmouth. And we consistently see on Buffy, good relationships don't last. So we go right from him talking about sort of Sunnydale's a bad place to look for love to what looks like a victim who says that she's here in town looking for true love, which just can't go well for her. This is our first look at April. I'm very fond of this actress. I think she did a great job with this role. And here are our fabulous opening credits from season 5. It's great seeing everybody together in these opening credits. As I'm doing this commentary, we're just finishing season 6, so we don't have Giles. And it's nice to see the credits where you see Giles. There's a shot in these credits that I really like that we just saw of Xander doing the Snoopy dance, which was from an episode I wrote. And I love it when I get to call back something from an episode way previous, like a first or second season episode. And there was a very early episode in which Xander talked about going over to Willow's house, or Willow coming over to Xander's house to watch Snoopy Christmas specials and doing the Snoopy dance. And I was very happy to be able to call that back. Here we see Christine, Joyce, Buffy's mom, getting ready for a date. And this was originally a much longer scene when I wrote it. It ended up getting cut down. But there were a lot of jokes about Buffy wanting her mom to go on a date from a movie in the 50s, that kind of joke about how she imagines her mom, what she imagines her mom doing on a date. And it got cut down, which is fine because it's plenty long. And there's a joke later about Joyce's bra, and I wish they'd put her in a dress that you would wear a bra under, but what are you going to do? Buffy has a line here about you've got a lot of time, vast acres of time in which you could plant crops. I was pleased with that line. It's one of those sort of Buffy jokes that's not a hard joke. What we call a hard joke is the kind of joke you get on a sitcom where it's got a definite punchline. Something I like on Buffy is that you get a lot of lines that are just sort of whimsical phrasing. The funny word, the funny turn of phrase, the odd metaphorical way of looking at the world. And I love writing those lines. People who know what's going to happen in episodes that follow this episode know that this date is... We're sort of at the end of Joyce's life here. Makes us all kind of sad. This episode is actually a good one all the way through for sort of watching in retrospect because of where Buffy and Spike go after this, because of how Warren becomes pivotal in season 6 of Buffy. This episode has some of our first... Well, it has interesting Buffy Spike stuff that informs what comes later, and it has absolutely our first view of Warren. And Joyce asks Buffy for dating advice here, so we get another chance to hit on our theme, which is Buffy and her relationship with men, and how she feels like she has done poorly in that department. She makes a joke in that scene about how she's had 2 boyfriends and they both left town. We're trying to stress that Buffy is motivated to look for a new man in this episode. She wants to fix those mistakes. She feels that she's done badly, and in order to fix them, she has to find the next man. That's her point of view at the beginning of the episode. Here's a little Tara-Anya scene, which is fun because we had never seen the 2 of them alone before. We don't really see them much alone since. It's an unusual moment. And they're talking about online investing, of all things. And our characters interact with April for the first time, which is going to give Anya some chance later to comment on April's unusual way of speaking. Which I was kind of worried about. I thought, how do we have a character talk like a robot in a same episode where we have Anya, who kind of talks like a robot anyway? The way we write Anya, where she speaks very precisely and a little inhumanly. I thought we're going to have trouble making jokes out of April's way of speaking. But it ended up working out really well, because in this scene, Anya is going to comment on... this party scene, Anya is going to comment on April's way of speaking, and we get the irony of her thinking that April talks funny. And this scene starts with a line that Joss wrote. Buffy is dancing with Xander, and she says, "This is way better than something like this is way better than hanging out with a really good-looking guy," which gave us funny. Yay, Joss. It's a spring break party, so I wrote in the script that everyone should be festive with the flowers and the spring break type things. I guess it comes across. And we see for the first time who this new man is going to be. Now, this episode is filled with misleads. We already established April, who looks like she's going to be a victim. And now we see Ben, who viewers know at this point is the same as Glory. They know he is in some way sharing a body with our main villain and is presumably himself also villainous. I mean, they're the same person. And here we see that he looks like he's going to be the guy that Buffy's going to hook up with. A very bad choice. So it was important that we make him extremely charming in this scene, because viewers know he's evil and are going to be harsh with Buffy if it seems like she's falling for the evil guy too easily. So I had to try to make him as charming as I possibly could. Joss helped with a lot of this. Now he says, let's dance. I'm just going to go dump this. He's holding like a cup or a plate or something. And he disappears for the longest trip to the trash basket that anyone's ever taken. He's gone for a really long time now. Now Xander and Anya have a scene here. And a lot of stuff in this episode I think is a little hard to hear. I think maybe the music at the party's too loud. What she actually says is, look at these little grain patties. But it's very hard to hear. It sounds like green patties or something. She's talking about the Chex Mix. I like it when Anya is impressed by the world. And we got our first look at Warren there, who later to become supervillain Warren. There's something very, very interesting about seeing characters. We're going to see Katrina again. Katrina dies in season 6 of Buffy. This is our first time seeing her. Her death is actually the moment in season 6 that makes Warren go from sort of being funny geek to really scary presence. Now, there are a couple moments in this story where Anya would normally be very jealous. When Buffy and Xander are dancing, and here when Xander thinks that April is so beautiful. And I made great efforts to keep her from being jealous, to have her being very consciously being generous in expectation of an immediate karmic reward. Because I think sometimes with Anya, the tendency is to make her a little too stereotypically girly. Give her all the attributes of which women have been accused over the years. Sort of grasping and needy, and I think that it's worth working very hard to make Anya make some interesting and different choices. And we did see a nice little moment of jealousy there between Tara and Willow, which is not normally part of the relationship, but is awfully cute. Now, Spike and Buffy's angry at Spike here because they just had the episode where Drusilla came back to town, and they had an extremely bad interaction, and Buffy found out about how Spike feels and is not very happy about it. Now, remember, this whole time, Ben is still going to the trash basket. Where the heck is he? If I were Buffy, I'd be feeling pretty dumped. James is extremely charismatic on film. I'm very glad we got those two kids together, Buffy and Spike. Okay, Ben's finally back from the trash. I know I had a line in some draft, I don't think it's in this finished version, in which he explains why he got delayed at the trash basket, but it's not here. And he continues to be charming. This is some more Joss stuff, where Joss came up with the notion that he gives her his phone number and explains that it's important that he give it to her before she sees him dance. Now, this is interesting. This whole episode, Buffy's been saying, gotta meet a man, I can do it better this time. When she's actually confronted by an offer of a date, her reaction is kind of interesting. She has a moment of sheer panic, which I think is very identifiable, where she blurts out to Ben that her bad history, that if he goes out with her, he could very well end up having to leave town. And Ben is persistent, which either looks to Buffy like he's genuinely interested and really, really charming, or to the audience like she almost escaped, but he's being a little predatory. And we see Spike watching. Now, Spike's interaction with April here, I wanted to make very clear with that look to Buffy that this is all for Buffy's benefit. And this is something he does a number of times later when he brings the date to Anya's wedding. This is something he does to try to get Buffy's attention. And in a very interesting act break, if you actually paused your machine at the moment when she picks up Spike, I think you'll be able to see that it's a dummy. And she throws Spike through the window. I had a lot of concerns when I wrote this about how were we going to be able to get to tie the exterior of Spike standing there with everybody in the party. And it actually turned out to be very easy. As soon as you see it, you kind of go, oh, right, he's just standing there on the part of the soundstage between the set and the backdrop. It looks fine. I like the way Buffy does that thing where she says, you just threw Spike through a window, and then she catches herself and realizes, well, actually, that was kind of good. I like it when Buffy allows herself a little bit of naughty pleasure. I don't know that she does that often enough.
If I hurt you.
April makes a reference here. She says, I hope your boyfriend takes good care of you. And just driving home our theme again, Buffy doesn't have a boyfriend. Buffy doesn't have a boyfriend. Buffy has a line that I like at the top of the scene where she says, I've kind of had it with really strong little women who aren't me. You know, they're talking about, okay, this actually was this scene, this moment where Buffy says, I feel like she's, and everybody said, oh, she's a robot, she's a robot.
Yeah, I was gonna say robot.
That was actually the kernel that sparked this episode to begin with. At the very beginning, Joss came in with the idea of, let's cast a beautiful woman who everybody immediately thinks is a robot, immediately knows is a robot. And so that moment, even when we had no idea what else the episode was about, we knew that moment was going to be in it. They're talking about the fact that doesn't seem like that urgent a problem. So far, the only person she's hurt is Spike. She's damaged the window, but other than that, she doesn't even seem to be, she's looking for Warren, but she doesn't seem to be mad at him. He's clearly the person that built her. And so we aren't on code red here. They talk about the fact that Giles has been babysitting Dawn. Now, in this season, even though Dawn is 14, we were protecting her because she was the key. And so somebody always had to be with Dawn. I think we've done well at letting Dawn grow up in the season since then. That I was kind of worried the first season we had her that she was playing younger than her age. But now it's clear that that was because she was the key. And now we've let the character grow up. And we see Giles and Joyce together. Giles and Joyce had sex in an episode called Band Candy that was the very first episode I ever wrote. And so every time they're together, which somehow ends up always being in my episodes, I always enjoy knowing that tension is there. Of course, the real reason Giles just ran out is because he was complaining that he had to deal with talking about boys with Dawn, and then Joyce comes home, let's talk about boys. Now here, Joyce has a rare, really playful moment where she teases Buffy and says she left her bra in her date's car or maybe at the restaurant. And it's really fun seeing Joyce have fun because we give her so much of the concerned mom material. It's fun seeing her have fun. I wish we'd given her more of that. Yeah. This was supposed to be extremely poignant. Poor little April, walking all night, knocking randomly on doors, now looking for Warren. It's got very poignant music playing under it, which sort of helps it have that feeling. But I don't think Joss ever felt that it really had what he wanted. He really wanted this poor little match girl. Because we really need to feel sympathy for April in this episode. She has invested her whole being in Warren, hence the title of the episode. And Warren has left her. Tara just said an uncharacteristic line where she says she practically had genuine molded plastic stamped on her ass. And that was a line that was almost cut. Joss felt that it didn't sound like Tara. But we talked about it some more and decided, well, since the intent clearly was that Tara was trying to not sound like Tara, that we would let her try it and see how it worked. And I'm very pleased that it didn't get edited out, that it made the cut. I like finding those moments where characters, I mean, you get good after a few years at sort of capturing the standard voices of these characters. What's fun then is finding the moments where it's still in character to have them break the voice a little bit. And they're tracking down people named Warren. Willow had a joke earlier about there aren't that many guys named Warren. It's pretty much Warren Beatty and President Harding. And that actually was a longer run in an earlier draft where she talks some more about President Harding, because he really was kind of a Don Juan of a president, is my understanding, is that he was a good-looking guy. But as you might understand, that kind of thing is the kind of thing that gets cut. Something has to. Yeah, Xander has a moment here where he refers to Oz, who hadn't been on the show for some time at this point. And that's one of those moments that I like I was talking about earlier, when you reference a much earlier episode. There's another one that comes up later in this episode too, when Dawn is going to reference the episode Ted, which I like because I always liked that episode, and I always thought there could have been more than one John Ritter robot, which would be our chance to bring him back. And I like it because it's a story that took place before Dawn was there, but since Dawn was provided with memories, as all of our characters were, as if she'd been there, it makes sense that the character could refer to that episode. And I like playing with that a little bit because I think that's just an extremely cool thing that we did. We see the Ben Glory transformation here. Just as Buffy is picking up the phone to call Ben and to accept his invitation. Now, in the previous scene, they were talking about how sad it is that Warren couldn't find a real woman to love, which is what prompts Buffy to make this call. She wants to find someone that she can love and be happy with. The interesting thing about the moment in which they talk about how sad it is for Warren, is that it's Tara saying it. Tara, who Warren is going to shoot and kill, is the one who, the first time she knows about Warren, expresses the sympathy for him. She's when everyone else is condemning him for building this sex bot, Tara is the one who says, well, maybe he's just a sad soul that couldn't find anyone. And the irony of her ending up being his victim just kills me. So Buffy, having accepted a date, she is well on the way to doing what she set out to do in the teaser. She's going to find herself a man and fix the mistakes she's made. We go right from that to another relationship where we see Warren and Katrina. Now, Katrina's going to get pissed off here and storm away, which is the very reason, the fact that Katrina leaves Warren in this episode is the very reason that Warren has such unresolved feelings about her in season 7 that he jeopardizes everything to go try to get her back, which results in her death. You can decide for yourself whether Buffy showing up at that door at that moment makes Buffy culpable for Katrina's eventual death. Probably not. We found an not amazing, but a very convenient way to keep this scene from taking forever, because we established that Warren used to go to Sunnydale High. So Buffy is able to say, I'm Buffy Summers, do you know who I am, do you know what I do? And have him say yes without her having to explain what a Slayer is. Now, that act break was another thing that Joss wanted from the very beginning that we were talking about this episode, which is everybody knows she's a robot, but Warren doesn't know that everybody knows, and we do it as an act break, as if it's new information, where we actually zoom in on Warren telling us that it's a robot, and have Buffy go, in what I think is one of her best line readings ever. I just love how she does that. For an unusual act break for our show, where there really is no new information. And this is a scene where Spike, I actually have sort of a vague memory of sort of talking Joss into this scene, that we were talking about how can we possibly get Spike into the magic box. He knows everybody's mad at him because of the previous events with him and Buffy and Drusilla, and everybody knowing that he's got the hots for Buffy. Why would he just walk in? And I'm suggesting that he comes in on fire and then tries to be really casual and just sort of take the temperature of the group and try to explain himself. And I like how it turned out. And Giles here has a lovely Ripper moment. I love how he does this. These moments where you sort of see his tough guy past. The interesting thing about this tough guy moment, though, is that Buffy kind of makes a liar out of him. What he is saying to Spike here as he gets so tough is, you're not going to get anywhere with Buffy ever. There's no way to Buffy. Give it up. Move on. And then when Buffy starts sleeping with Spike, you know, you wonder if Giles ever thinks about this moment and goes, you know, I really thought what I was saying was true. Great moment. Those two actors are wonderful together. I love that he heads to head back out into the sunlight. This scene is shot in the set called the Espresso Pump, which is sort of an exterior-interior that we have. It's out on our back lot, and it's got big windows that actually open to the outside.
Yes. Do you know him?
Poor April.
Yes.
I think this might have been a scene that we added when it was short, or
Hurry, you might catch.
this is a scene that
I was getting very
kind of lifts out.
Thank you.
And it just sort of establishes how sad things are for April.
Fair.
In this scene, we get into something really interesting, where we start really moving Buffy, giving Buffy a realization that's different than what she's been shown up to this point. Everything in the episode has been driving Buffy toward Ben up to this point. And in this one, we start talking about love that goes wrong. And what we're really thinking about here is Riley. Because what Warren is talking about is, I wasn't happy with her, and I didn't tell her, and I didn't give her a chance for us to work on it. That's exactly the mistake that Buffy's been agonizing over with respect to Riley, even though it's never commented on. But she's also being told, here's this girl who was perfect for me. She laughed at my jokes. The thing Buffy's been trying to do is, maybe if I'm perfect for the right guy, he'll love me. And this guy's telling her that that doesn't work. That he's more interested in Katrina, who is difficult and has, you know, makes electric trains and just sort of has some strangeness and edges to her, than he was in April, who was perfect for him. And so this sort of makes Buffy start thinking, or at least presents her with the information that she can think about later, I suppose, about how you can't make a relationship be perfect just through effort. And we get the first bit here of incredulous Buffy. I gave her a lot of lines in this episode where she is just flat out incredulous from here to the end of the episode. I think she does it really well. He'll tell her something, and then she'll repeat it incredulously, and it becomes funny. And this is another line in this scene that was one of the very first lines that Joss proposed when we started talking about this episode, which is Buffy says, "Is she dangerous?" He says, "She's only programmed to be in love," and Buffy says, "Then she's dangerous,"
Do you know where
which I
Warren
think is a
Why
great
did you get to
exchange.
Warren?
It's completely Joss. And now we get our first
Fine.
instance of April being truly dangerous here when she attacks Katrina. Katrina's had kind of a rough time on our show. She's almost killed in this episode, and the next time you see her, she is killed. Now, I knew when Joss explained what he wanted this scene to be, he said she wraps her arms around Katrina and squeezes so hard that she breaks her ribs. And we hear that sort of cracking noise. What he didn't say is which way they should be facing. And I felt like he felt it was obvious. I wasn't quite sure whether Katrina would be facing toward or away from April. So I actually left it in the script. I didn't specify either. And figured someone on the set would work it out. And they did, and it looks good. We just saw Spike saying, "You want me to move on, I'll move on." And he's putting all of his Buffy stuff. He's been collecting Buffy artifacts, and he's putting them all in a box. And this is another mislead in this episode of it looks like he is going to burn or throw away all his Buffy stuff and maybe become a danger to her because he is finally moving on. And we'll see at the end of the episode what he actually does. I love this shot of her dangling Katrina. Looks pretty good. I'm assuming that what they did was have her hanging from wires, which they then painted out. And we're going to get our first view of robot vision here in a minute, which we used to great effect in a later episode. After the Buffy bot is built, we get some comedy out of the Buffy bot's robot vision. And in the script, I actually specified some, but not all, of what you see on the screen when you go into robot vision. And Josh was very clear. This is another thing where he was very involved about some things that he wanted to see. So you actually see that there's positions 1 through 6 listed down the side there. Things like that were specified in the script. Poor April, she's trying so hard. And now we get a hint of Warren's true nature. Up to this point, he's been very cooperative with Buffy. He explains that he really loves Katrina, that he made a mistake, and he does the right thing, and he tells her he doesn't love her. There's incredulous Buffy again. And at this moment, Warren wimps out. And he says, "I don't love you, I love her," and points at Buffy to deflect April's anger onto Buffy. Oh, that didn't look very good, the breaking of the seesaw. I wish that looked better. I was sort of racking my brains looking for things that you could fight with on a playground. Because I think fights are more interesting when you get props involved. Now, it's obviously actually cold out there. All of our actors are in nice bundly things, except for poor April, who was probably freezing this whole episode. And Warren runs off after Katrina. And we know he doesn't get her back. Again with the props, always exciting. And now the batteries start wearing down. Now this actress has to be convincingly a robot and start just tearing our heart out. And this is a very sad scene
Sometimes I feel better when
in
I cry,
which
but there might be rest issues.
Buffy lies to April in this scene. And I hope that's clear. I was never sure if it was clear.
I've rechecked everything.
But April is worrying about what Warren thinks of her. Is he going to come back? How's he going to find her in the dark? Because she thinks it's getting dark out. And maybe this is a test, and if I wait really patiently, he'll come back. And it's just so sad. And Buffy connects with someone here, even though it's a robot, which is kind of sweet, and it makes you wonder, what does that say when Buffy successfully connects with someone and sits with them as they die, and the person that she's doing it with is a robot? And she does this noble thing where she lies and she says that Warren was proud of April, that Warren talked with her about April, sort of saying what she needs to say to get April through this. So Buffy is actually seeing here sort of the consequences of if you live for one person and you try to make yourself perfect for a man, this is what you get. They don't really love you because they don't really get to know you. And then you have all the pain of being alone again. And that she doesn't have to do that because she's not a robot. And she has a full and exciting life as a slayer. And so she makes the decision in this episode that she doesn't have to go get the next man. Which is a lesson that Buffy kind of continues to need to learn, I think. I love the job that this actress does here where she's running down. Where if it wasn't for the fact that her hair is blowing, you'd actually think the film was slowing down. I think she does a great job. Look at that freeze. Oh, so sad. And look at this with the crane. I think we should have got some sort of award for best robot death of the season. Now, to write this scene where Xander's repairing the window, I had to go to the Santa Monica Public Library and get books on window repair. So I hope I got it right.
Yeah.
This is kind of taken word for word from a book on how to do this. But I had to read about different kinds of windows and what shims were. And they're talking here about what Buffy's learned. This is one of those scenes that makes fans go, Buffy and Xander, they're the ones that really belong together. That was how it was from the very first episode when he sees her go by. So it looks like Buffy's getting her act all straightened out. What our viewers who saw this for the first time didn't know was she was about to plunge into that very bad Spike relationship. I specified in the script that Ben's phone number should be written on a distinctively colored piece of paper so that every time we saw it, we would recognize it. In an earlier draft, I had him even tear off a corner of a flyer on the wall at the party. But that went away because they're standing nowhere near the wall. And she cancels the coffee date. Now, I always felt we were a little inconsistent here about whether Glory wanted Ben to go on a date with Buffy and ingratiate himself with the group, or whether she was upset. Because I think in two adjacent episodes, we actually have her have a different attitude about it. which is our bad.
No.
We had a couple different minions for her. And poor Warren can't but get back with Katrina. Now, when the script was originally released, this was the big surprise ending at the end of the script. Was who's there but it's Spike. And he's got his box of stuff, make me a Buffy bot. And of course, in the later episode Intervention, it's all about the Buffy bot. And then, much to our surprise, she became useful again at the top of the next season when Buffy is dead. So that looks like the end of the episode. Except,
Hey, Mom.
this scene, which Joss wrote, which was not released as part of the original script. Somebody's still getting it right, Buffy says, and we really, this is all commenting on relationships. You see there in the background. It's very sad. And that's our show.